Hey guys, I'm Pat Kelly. Okay, in this problem, they give us this algebraic expression, which sometimes, they can get involved, but we're asked to just factor it. In order to factor it, I'd like to take you over to the side and do a little bit of scratch work and compare this problem to something that's maybe a little bit, lower level, easier to see, okay? So for instance, compare this to 5x y squared plus y to the 7th. I'm making it up, so realize this is not directly related to this particular problem. But if you saw this expression and were asked to factor it, let's think about the process, because you'll use the exact same thought process in factoring the bigger or uglier expressions, okay? So what I would do is I would look for common factors amongst the terms. And I really only see a y. There's a y to the 2 power and a y to the 7th. That's all I'm going to be able to pull out is a factor involving y. But then even the power that y will be raised to when you pull it out, is it going to be the 2 or is it going to be the 7? You know this. It's going to be the 2, but why? And realize that you're always pulling out the lower power. Remember that thought process for when we get to our actual problem. Okay, let's finish this one up by, you know what to do when we factor. Then you start a grouping symbol and write down what's left over. 5x, the y squared's gone. I still have plus. And now there were 7 factors of y, and I pulled 2 out. So there's going to be 5 factors of y left over, correct? Let me also even make a little bit more of a point with that. So where does this 5 come from? Think of it this way. This 5 comes from the 7 that was there and subtract the 2 that you just pulled out. And that's, of course, equal to 5. All right, what's your point? Well, let's get to the harder problem now then, shall we? Let's factor this expression. And I still really only see 2 terms, and so I would begin by looking for a common factor amongst those terms. The factor here is the entire x plus 2 in parentheses. Your factors can get sizable, but it's still a single factor, x plus 2 raised to some power, x plus 2 raised to some power. So we'll begin our factoring by factoring out the x plus 2 to a power. X plus 2. And right here, we have to decide what power to raise that factor to that we're pulling out. And just like we thought before, think of the lower power. So this minus 1/2, and here's a 1/2, the minus 1/2 is lower. So I'll factor out that x plus 2 parentheses and raise to the minus 1/2 power. Okay, still following what we did before, then I would begin some kind of grouping symbol, and I'll use square braces just so we don't confuse it with the parentheses I already have. And then inside, you write down what's left over. So this 2 and x are still there. This x plus 2 to the minus 1/2 power, that's been completely factored out. And then I have plus from here. Okay, now this x plus 2 is still there, but to a different power than it was. And in order to figure out what power goes there, do the same kind of thought that we had over here. We wrote down the higher power that was there, 7, subtract what we did pull out. So even if it's scratch work off to the side, I'm going to take the 1/2 and subtract the power that we're pulling out is a minus 1/2. And a 1/2 take away a negative 1/2, that's just 1, right? So it's this thinking here that tells me this exponent should just be 1. Okay, that can be tough to see. Then I'm done with my factoring and close my square brace. And I'm going to go one more step to clean up, but that first step can really trip some students up. But I want you to compare it to the algebra that you already know. It's just that the expressions are getting a little bit more involved. Let's clean this one up and we'll be done. I'm going to leave the x plus 2 raised to the minus 1/2 out in front. And the real cleanup I can do is within the square braces, notice that parentheses now that's only to the 1 power. That 1 power is really nice because I don't even need the parentheses now then, right? 2x plus x is 3x. And then plus 2. And I like it. I'll go one more step if we want. I do have that negative exponent that sometimes looks nicer downstairs. So I'll leave the 3x plus 2 as a numerator. Then I'll write that x plus 2 that was raised to the minus 1/2 downstairs. In fact, I might even write it as a square root down there. That 1/2 power would be a radical, a square root. Okay? All right, so the original expression looks better, like this, I think. And that's because of our factoring that we did. Okay? Practice these, but bank on your knowledge of algebra that you have that, okay? All right, I'll see you again.